Paul Smith and I met at the Purgatory Trailhead between Silverton and Durango off Highway 550. I had just finished a 6-day rafting trip on the Colorado River in Utah the day before. We had some initial difficulties finding the trailhead, but once on the trail, it mostly dropped down first along Purgatory Creek, then Cascade Creek. Finally, after about 5 miles, we crossed the mighty Animas on a bridge. The trail to Needleton was relatively easy. I watched the train go by on the other side of the river and saw a commercial rafting group go by.
So there's a bunch of cabins around here. Needleton, there's no people here. There's signs that say no trespassing, stay on the trail, blah blah blah. So I guess these are some kind of summer cabins. People probably can take the train up here and come and stay in the little cabins. Who knows?
This is where the fun times began. The trail along the Animas is faint and easily lost. At first, we couldn't find it after the grassy meadow. The crux of the trail turned out to be Water Tank Hill, so named for the water tank visible from the top of the hill on the opposite shore by the tracks. The trail back down the other side was even worse than the uphill. We passed Ruby Creek and continued along the Animas River looking for No Name Creek, which turned out to be a serious creek that we crossed only with difficulty. While we looked for a campsite, we found the trail that goes up No Name Creek. Up the trail, we found a suitable campsite that was a little higher than directly on the river. Day 2, morning, No Name Creek Trail. A brutal day. No Name Creek Trail is barely a trail. The first mile was quite steep. We barely made 1 mile an hour. That was the easy part. Next, we were confronted with avalanche debris fields with huge downed trees. Very slow going. Finally, we reached a meadow with the Jagged cabin, now a ruin. About 1 o'clock, we set up a campsite at the far end of the meadow. Paul suggested we make a try at Jagged Mountain. We climbed through trees to another meadow where No Name Creek cascaded down from the left. Later, when we returned from Jagged Pass, we got confused, thinking our campsite was in this upper meadow. We fought our way up to the next level near treeline, where No Name Creek meandered through a flat basin filled with willows. We found the trail that kept left of the willows and climbed to a pristine alpine lake, newly emerging from winter's snows. From here we could see Jagged Pass, our next destination. We climbed the pass partly in snow and got our first glimpse of Jagged Mountain. It was after 4 p.m., so we decided we didn't have time to climb it. Besides, there was a lot of snow and the approach looked dangerous, so we aborted. Day 3, we climbed 2,000 feet over Ruby No Name Pass. From the pass, we saw our next campsite, a high alpine lake at 12,600 feet elevation, just emerging from its snowy season. Day 4, Pigeon and Turret Peaks. Day 4 of our adventure, I fell 15 feet on Pigeon Peak. Descending about 800 feet down Ruby Creek, we surprised 2 adult mountain goats, but by the time I got out my iPhone to take a picture, they had scampered to a snowfield 1,000 yards away. The guidebook says to ascend the grassy slopes farther down, but Paul saw a ramp between 2 rock bands, so he went that way. It was a little shorter. After ascending to the next level, I went right into a boulder field. Not a good idea. While I negotiated the maze of large boulders, Paul went up the snowfield. Afterwards, we reached the pass. Turret Peak was a straightforward ascent with just a Class 2+ V-slot to get past. To get to the base of Pigeon Peak, we traversed and descended 600 feet through a pass, and then about 150 feet above a tiny basin, we ascended grassy slopes to the east. Climbing through blocky terrain, we reached the summit pyramid at 13,800 feet. Paul had gone on ahead, so we were separated at this point. I climbed to a ledge and looked at a 15-foot chimney. Jerry wrote in his guidebook to the 13ers describes a Class 4 chimney as being the crux of the climb. It started to hail. I puzzled over the bottom of the chimney, unable to find good holds. Meanwhile, the rock was getting wet from the hail. I decided to leave my pack and go for it. Trusting a tiny finger hold, I lost my balance. I was falling. Bouncing down past my pack, I hit my head but suffered no damage since I was wearing a helmet. I stopped my fall before a 150-foot precipice that ended in a steep snowfield. Shaken, I waited for Paul. When he returned, he had summited but had some Class 5 moves. When he looked down at the chimney I had tried from above, he said it was harder than anything he'd done, and it was definitely not the right chimney. He offered to guide me to the summit because we were close, but I was too shaken. We returned to our high camp at Upper Rubri Lake in a thunderstorm. We were soaked. Fortunately, the sun came out and we were able to dry our stuff out before we went to bed. Day 5, Twin Thumbs Pass to Chicago Basin. Day 5, our first objective was the pass above our high alpine lake. From the pass, we had another look at Twin Thumbs Pass. It looked formidable with a steep snowfield. With Paul kicking steps, we slowly made our way over Twin Thumbs Pass. What a view! Upper Chicago Basin with lakes partially filled with melting snow. When we got down to the lakes, we met our first humans in 5 days. There was a mother and her lamb mountain goat hovering 10 feet away. The people claimed that they had followed them from lower Chicago Basin. We descended to the lower basin to set up our campsite. Day 6, climbed Jupiter Mountain. Climbing about a mile up the Columbine Pass Trail, we broke up the southwest ridge on Jupiter. Later, when we came down, we found we'd missed a climber's trail by 100 yards. Paul explored an abandoned mine shaft with his headlamp. The ascent was wet. It rained off and on. I bet Paul a gel that the summit we saw first was a false summit, and I won. He got on top first. Initially, I thought it was another false summit he was on, but he found the register. We got back to our campsite around noon and decided to pack up and hike back, 12 miles, eventually reaching the bridge over the Animas where the trail goes up to Purgatory Trailhead 5 miles up Cascade Creek. It rained on us a lot of the way. Day 7, 5-mile hike to the trailhead, was a Bluebird, Colorado day with early morning mist rising from the meadows.